My name is Matt Wilhelmy, and I'm the owner of Strategic Voyages Business Consultants. I'm also the author of Taboo Business Questions, What's Haunting Every Entrepreneur's Growth. Today, I'm joined by my good friend Lou Costabile, who is a communications instructor and coach. He's also a Dale Carnegie Award winner in sales. He runs a really successful YouTube channel with millions of monthly views, also a 7th degree black belt. And today, what we're going to be focused on is some solutions with communication in businesses. You know, I think a lot of us can probably relate to that annoying coworker that sends too many emails, or maybe that coworker or even that leader who is too direct and doesn't even want to know the time of day, doesn't have time, is too busy. And so, we're kind of left to figure out what to do there. And Lou, being an expert, communication, in organizations and leaders in business, can help us with some solutions on what to do. He's got a masterclass in communication that he goes through with his clients and his organizations. And so, Lou, we were talking about this very specific issue with an IT professional. IT CFO called you to work with this IT professional and help him with some communication skills. Walk the audience through kind of your approach. Is there like an assessment that you do? Is it painful? Kind of what's the process? How do you understand kind of the issues in the process? Yeah. But then what do those solutions look like? How do clients what does it look like when they've got it figured out? I'm sure you've got some success stories, and I'm really excited to dive in.
So let me give you a couple of success stories. So I got a call from, as you mentioned, the financial executive who was an IT manager for the first time. This person was working in their IT, but never had a person under them managing. And somebody from the warehouse had an associate's in computers. So they're now going to be trying to help the new IT manager. So the first thing I do is I present them with a one-page DISC profile. And this gives me the understanding of how they like to receive and give information. All right. Either they're going to be dominant in their style, they're going to be influential, which is what the DISC is breaking out, or they're going to be steady, or they're going to be cognitive. So once I understand that person's style, I know how to help them with communication I'm giving them. If they're direct, I can say, hey, do this. And they'll say, okay, yeah. And it's done. If they're influential, I might have to sugarcoat a little more and make it more of a story. If they're steady, I need to give it to them at their pace, not at my pace. Maybe I'm a little eager that day and I need to bring it down a little bit. And if they're a high C, then I have to give them much more detail so that they have, the understanding and all of their questions are answered so they can be successful. So once I've given them that piece and I know their style, and they could be blends of some of those, then I can give them information. The first thing I like to do usually is give them a job description. I said, what do you think your job description should look like? And start to have them create it with me. When we do it together, and I'll say, well, that looks good. It's almost like building a resume. If you're building a resume, you want to say, what is the value you're bringing to a company? So what do you think the value is going to be to being a IT manager? How is that going to help the company overall? Well, I'm going to fix the computers. Well, that's a portion of it, but that's not how you're going to strategically build the company better. Are you talking with any of the leaders in the company? Are you having meetings? No, I never do that unless they have a problem with their computer. I go over there and fix their computer. Well, that's not being strategic. Now we're shifting you from IT guy who goes and gets it done to business leader who starts to research and starts to study. And what do other IT leaders think about? And what are they doing? And you start to look at who you want to be. If you think of it as, and I use the term in the martial art class, if you're a green belt, this person's a yellow belt. They've never been a leader before. Then you need to show them, here's what a green belt does. Here's what a blue belt does. Here's what a black belt does. And this is what it looks like. So if you mentor them to show them what it's going to look like, if I said to you, do a resume, and I'm a boss and I walk out. Well, there's a lot of different styles to do resumes. And if I show you a resume and say, plagiarize this resume and fill your information in it, then all of a sudden it becomes simple. And since I've done this for some other companies, I've already gone through some of the job descriptions and things like that. So I can give them a job description that looks like theirs. Let's use this as an example. He says, well, I don't know what an IT job description should look like. I said, do you have Google? He goes, yeah. I said, well, why don't you Google IT manager job description, see what comes up, and print me off 3. And they're like, well, that was easy. So if they're a doer, I have them do something. And then I start to show them, you're just not thinking through the process. Let's slow down and start to become a thinker rather than just a doer. And then I'll write up a review of this is the first thing the person should do. This is the A priority. Maybe you should have a Monday morning meeting with your report, see what they've done, and get some structure in their job descriptions.
So you're working with them on their job descriptions. How does that play into their communication?
Well, how it plays into their communication is first of all, I'm usually not a one and done coach. It's not a parking ticket, right? This is a career. So if I'm a lawyer and it's a one and done parking ticket, then, thanks very much. And I walk out. But this is, let's use you as the example. You've evolved. When I first met you, you were working on an associate's degree, and now you have, your much higher degrees. So we evolve, right? I wasn't the communication coach beginning, and I didn't become a 7th degree black belt in 2 days. It took a lifetime to do this. So as we evolve is going to be when the time is. And like a good coach, you might not have to, let's just use your kids. At first you're changing their diapers and you're cleaning up the poop, right? And you're actually excited about that. And then finally you go, okay, you're 5 now, stop pooping and making me clean it up, right? You finally get to a tolerance point that it changes. And then you become more of a, you go from everything to more of a assistant. And then actually not an assistant. By the time they're 16, they're the experts and you become the assistant. You just give advice, right? You become a coach. I wouldn't do it that way. I think you're going to burn your hand if you stick your hand on the stove. No, I know what I'm doing. I'm the expert. Okay. Well, maybe you want to listen to me next time. So, as we evolve, it's embracing that evolvement and being in tune, intentional with people to get to know them, like them, and trust them, and help them where they're at when they're at.
So Lou, when you're working with this IT professional who's never been a leader before,
right,
and you had him print off the job descriptions, how did that kind of empower him? I'm assuming it's a male. I guess I shouldn't assume that. How are you helping this person with their communication? What did that even look like in their team? How did it translate to sending more eloquent emails, or is this person like a cheerleader now? Like, I guess, what does that even look like when they get it?
So let's talk about if I can use one word, it's awareness, right? We don't know what we don't know. And then finally we become aware. I'm going to go back to you for a second. You at one point were fighting me against education. I am really smart. I don't need education. That's what you told me. And I basically was.
I'm not sure that's exactly verbatim what I said.
Pretty verbatim.
Okay, maybe.
and I made sure that you are smart, you are brilliant, you're one of the best business minds I saw. But I said, why don't you get this just so that you can have that in your bullet belt buckle? And now you're a cheerleader for education. Now you're unstoppable. So this is kind of the same thing in the martial arts, right? A kid gets beaten and he comes to my class and he says to me, I've got a problem getting beaten all the time. And finally I show him a few moves and he goes, hey, I'm not getting beaten as much. And then he says, hey, I'm not getting beaten at all. And then he says, I'm pretty much beating everybody, right? There's a progression and a level. It's like steps, and you watch it go until finally they get confident. And that's just the process. Some of the other business issues that I hear is my sales manager and my PR person aren't connecting with each other at all. And I found out that the sales manager was a driver, and he couldn't stand it when the PR person wanted all this detail for, it was her sales brochures. He's like, I don't need the detail. I just want to get sales. I just want revenue. And she was like, I need the details. And so she was frustrating him. He was frustrating her, until I went over the D.I.S.C on a extended lunch and learn with them. The COO, Chief Operating Officer, connected with me and said, Lou, can you come in and do an extended lunch and learn for us? And the sales manager walks up to me after the meeting, after he knew his personality style. He goes, she wants a lot more details, right? And I looked at him and said, yep. And that was it. He walked away. He was done. She wrote a 2-page paragraph of, oh my gosh, I know why he hates me, because he wants yeses and nos. And I kept forcing him to give me all this information. So if you are that PR person, what you do is you give them options. Hey, sales manager, which one of these 3 options would you like to do? And then we can talk about this later, and we'll find a time that we can dwell into this. So you start, again, it goes back to speaking their language. Again, I'm on YouTube. I'm relatively successful on YouTube, but I'm not so successful that they call it LouTube, right? I still have to speak to other people to get them interested in the car videos that I do.
Well, that's really interesting because it seems like you're able to kind of take people from this state of even being unaware and not even knowing necessarily what the issues are, but just knowing that there's some issues out there, to an awareness where they understand that they need to change, or they can adjust a little bit in their communication, and they start to get a little bit more confidence and a little bit more cognitive abilities to kind of relate to more people, and they start to buy in. And then, you didn't use this word, but eventually, once they're aware, they become ambassadors, and they become this polarizing, ability to communicate with a lot of different people, savant in communication. That's a really interesting journey that you're kind of able to walk people through. And I want to touch on something you mentioned, because I think it's so crucial that people hear this point, which is fixing communication is not a one and done. It is not a parking ticket, to your point. It is not okay, well, I watched the 2-minute YouTube video of Lou talking about DISC, and now I'm an expert. That might be a good start. But in order to truly become a master, in order to truly become kind of this expert communicator with all people, you have to go through this process. It's a lifetime journey of being able to relate, tell stories, have some voice inflection, but also recognizing what the other person needs. You mentioned it's not called LouTube yet. Maybe one day it will, but it's a really great reminder for people that you have to remember what is important to other people before they're going to really care what you think is important. And so, keeping that in top of mind, I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit, Lou, about this one-day communications program that you and I talked about. You've got a really great format for an easy to digest kind of introductory course. I would assume, kind of based on what you've said, that it's not meant to be a one and done. Even if it is a full day, it's enough to kind of improve some things, but there's probably a lot more to this solution. I'm wondering if you can maybe unpack kind of what an expectation could be for that day program, but then also if there's more content that people can get, where that would be located. But first, let's start with this one-day communications program. Can you talk me through kind of what that looks like and what kind of value people would get out of it?
So the one-day program is, it sticks. First of all, I'll start with that. There are other tools out there that just don't stick as effective, in my opinion, or at least the way I instruct it, as the DISC. It's called the Universal Language, the DISC. It started in '84, and I've been doing it since 1995. The short story is I do 2 hours with the entire team. The team is consisting of 10 people. And then I do one-on-ones, half-hour one-on-ones. So 2 hours of that, 5 hours of one-on-ones. And then I wrap it up and I bring it all together and I show them all their DISC profiles on an Excel spreadsheet. I say, this is why this person is this way. This is why you're this way. And this is how you can communicate better. For example, if you're a high D and your financial person is a high C, know that you can't walk into your financial person and just go, hey, I need a new financial report. The board's meeting tomorrow. Because that's going to frustrate them. You need to give them a little more context and a little more time to put together the financials for the company for that type of thing. The opposite of that is if you're the financial person, you need the details, and you know some people on the board are going to be drivers, you better have the numbers very simplistic so they can understand the numbers quickly. And you used the term earlier in one of our other topics, which was tell the story of what those numbers mean, so that that story tells that story easily and comprehensible to the person, or maybe the term is, teach it to a 5-year-old. If a 5-year-old can understand it, the board members can all understand it. Make it so simple that the board members can understand it. So that's the key and again, you talked about the 4 levels of learning. There's, and we talked about awareness is, I don't even know that I don't even know, is the bottom one. The second one is, now you know you don't know. Now you're aware. So if someone's watching this who's a president, they might be aware that, hey, I don't know what the DISC is. Well, that's number 2. Then you call Lou, because he's a master virtuoso at it, because I've been doing it since '95. And there's other people who've been doing it. I don't know if they've been doing it since '95. We talked about this. I don't talk a ton about it, but I'm a 7th degree black belt. Well, that didn't happen overnight. I mean, this is a lifelong journey. So, there's other people who have great moves and you could use them, and that's fine. But, I'm going to probably have a couple of moves they may or may not have.
Yeah, I think when you're working with coaches, that's kind of the value that you get is not only their background and experience and some of the stories they can tell, but also their secret moves. And, like a lot of great professors, they probably don't teach everything on the first go around because it would just be right over your head. And you have to kind of lay the foundation a little bit, teach some of the more basic martial arts skills before you can really kind of teach them the more advanced ones. And that's kind of what I wanted to spend a minute or two on here, Lou, is some of those advanced skills. You had mentioned in an episode prior to this one that there's not only a primary letter, a D, an I, an S, and a C, but you can also have a secondary letter. And I'm wondering if you can maybe help me understand what that even means. And then how does that play into communication as well? Kind of having those two different primary and the secondary letters.
Yeah, there's something called a super disc, and a super disc is actually when somebody is kind of what's called flat across the board, which means that when you do their numbers, they're actually good at all four areas. And that's only about 10% of the people. Most people have a dominant style. All right. If you're an engineer, you're probably going to be a high C because you need all the details. You want that perfection. If you're a decorator of a business office, you're probably a high C. If you're an engineer, you're probably a high C. On the other hand, if you're a salesperson, you're probably high. You like telling stories. Now, that's a good thing. The bad thing is you might not know when to shut up. If you're working with a D and you're a salesperson, you're going, hey, I got this great thing and I want to sell you this widget. And he goes, does the widget fix this? The D says that. And he says, yeah, it does. And he says, okay, I'll buy it. Well, let me tell you more features about it. No, you can stop right there when he said, okay, I'll buy it. Because now you're speaking his language. So when you know the styles, you can do that. One of the tougher styles to sell to is a steady because they want to process, they want to think about it. So does the C, but the C needs all the details. The steady just, and sometimes you can look at people's desk and understand. If they've got a ton of papers all over the desk and you say, hey, where is that? And they pull it out of a piece of paper that like out of this pile, it's because they know where that one piece of paper is so steady with their mess that they understand that. A C will have a perfect desk. All the pencils will be lined up right. The I, they'll have pictures of their kids in the background and pictures of their softball tournament and their pickleball tournament and all that stuff. And the D will just have like, a high level picture, Michael Jordan's doing a dunk or something very courageous, or here's their yacht, or here's their special car that they've purchased, so it depends on, they want to show their success, and it's not all. I've met a lot of drivers who are very humble, and I've met a lot of eyes that don't know when to stop talking, that they want to keep influencing. So, did that help with your question?
Well, that definitely, it's interesting. You brought up those different communication techniques with the different, like how the D would relate to an S or the I would relate to the C, because that was the next thing I was going to ask you about. But what I was curious about is kind of the primary and the secondary. So I think you had mentioned kind of you being a high D, but maybe you're also a lowercase I. And I think that's kind of how the DISC formats it, right?
Right. So I'm obviously a social influencer, so I have to be high enough I to get people to watch my channel. And I guess I'd say I have to have enough confidence. I think everybody can do it, but people don't have the confidence, or they think they don't have the confidence. And then the driver side of me is when I run businesses, and I've got several businesses. So when I run the martial arts, they want the driver, Luke, take the hill, right? There might be casualties, but we're going to take the hill. So you can be both, and you can adjust, right? I mean, there's times when, let's just say I'm putting together a video that my son takes his analytical skills and sees things I don't see and recommends them to me, saying, hey, this would be better here and that. So he's seeing it from a very, he's my editor. He sees it from a very analytical standpoint, and educates me on what I should be doing for the next one. So if we're aware, we help each other, and that's really the blessing to it. I mean, I made you aware of one of your only holes, in my opinion, which was the education, and you took that and you became the 7th degree black belt with it. And then my son, who's 19, teaches me all the time that Dad, you need this in different spots. You just can't be willy-nilly about it. So we're all learning from each other. It doesn't matter if you're a baby, you're learning. If you've never had a baby before, you're going to learn a lot when you get your first kid. So it doesn't matter age. It doesn't matter that. It just matters that we become aware.
Well, Lou, I want to kind of land the plane here because I think,
Sure.
people have been, if they've made it to this point in the episode, they're probably wondering, how in the heck do I get in touch with Lou? You're all over the social media channels, but is there a preferred kind of methodology for kind of a first step? Is there a inquiry on your website, or is it a Facebook message? How would somebody get in touch with Lou to find out more
Yeah,
about your one-day workshops?
my personal email is relatively easy to remember. It's my company name is True Power Martial Arts, so it's not all that. It's just True Power, but there's no E in True and no E in Power. So it's 7 letters, TRUPOWR @yahoo.com. And then just in the subject line saying, hey, I saw Matt's podcast with you, and I wanted to talk more about communication styles or the DISC or whatever. And I'm happy to help people.
Great. And then I do want to help you plug your YouTube channel so that, we
Sure.
can get some cross-pollination here. You mentioned that it's an automotive channel. I feel like that's a little boiled down from what it actually is. It's not just an automotive channel. You're not going over oil changes in car and tire rotations. You're popping the hood, you're starting the cars, you're doing burnouts, you're hearing and looking at some really, really interesting cars. And so you kind of interview the people who own the car, you get to hear that story. And so how would somebody find this channel on YouTube?
So if they just go to Google and start punching in My Car Story with Lou, My Car Story with Lou, LOU, it will automatically come up. You can go to YouTube and do that. You can go to Facebook, My Car Story with Lou, and it'll just automatically pop up.
Google has an amazing AI tool that's built into it. So here we are, My Car Story with Lou. Just to kind of remind everybody, Lou Costabile, expert, instructor, and coach, all things communication, uses the DISC profile and methodology to kind of help different business leaders communicate more effectively, resolving a lot of tension within organizations, and all of those different things that we went over. I think overall, what I'd like to say, Lou, is thank you for your time. You're very generous with your time, and you've been very intentional with giving me some feedback throughout my career. So it just goes to kind of further demonstrate your influence that you've had over me, and I'm sure that a lot of your clients would also say, Lou really understands how to communicate, how to relate, and your positivity and confidence is infectious. So again, I really appreciate your time today, Lou. I hope everybody gets a chance to check out the video, and again, just thank you so much for your time.
Thanks so much, man. It's always fun.